and
Yeah.
here we are. So, thank you very much, Jonathan, for taking the time, mate. I know you're a busy man. I see you doing all your machining and things like that on your storyline, which is awesome. So, so for those that don't know much about you, which I'll be surprised if they don't because of the stuff you're doing.
Very kind.
Let's hear your story of where it all started, mate. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to kind of follow your story from, like we were talking off air, from when you went like official, like business official thing, even though you've been building bikes for years. So I've kind of followed your story for a while, which has been cool.
Yeah, it's been very cool, and thank you for having me on. I don't know. A lot of people know the story already, but I guess I can keep it. I always say I accidentally built a pretty bike once. I can't remember how many years ago it was now, but after a conversation with my barber, Nick, who is a brilliant fella, he just said to me one day, he cut me out and he goes, I think I'm going to buy a motorbike and turn it into a calf racer. And I looked at him and went, what's a calf racer? And he described it to me, and I went home after my haircut and I started Googling them, and I Pinterest, Instagram, all that, and I just found these bikes that I just sort of fell in love with, this sort of minimalist design. And then after a couple of months, I kept going back to them, and then all of a sudden I found a bike that was advertised on eBay, and it was a total shitbox. It was a CG125. Somebody had told me that if you want to start building bikes, CG is a really good one to start, and it is. But I'd chosen this ES model, the newer model with the pressed steel box frame. Anyway, I went. Yeah. I took my old man, and I went, and we had to basically drag it out of a scrap heap, and it was in the right state, and we picked it up, chucked it on the back of a van we'd hired, and brought it home. And I started, and I just learning as I went, you know. But it was a total restoration first, and then it was a make it look nice, how I wanted it. It didn't run, nothing. So, you know, every sort of step in that first build was a triumph for me. And I was doing it in the corner of this workshop in a very small space with a bag of rudimentary tools. I really had nothing, you know. And you don't need anything to start building bikes, do you? You don't, if you just get stuck in. So I had a bag of spanners and a bag of screwdrivers and a few bits and bobs, DIY shit, you know, and that's all I had. And then the more I got into the building, the more I got into knowing what was in my head and what I wanted it to look like, then you start buying in tools, and your workshop starts growing. My workshop started growing the same time as the bike was getting together. And I need this to do this, I need that to do this. And eventually, I think it took me about a year. But when I finished it, it was beautiful for me. I loved it. And I started using Instagram to sort of document my work. I wasn't intending to show off on Instagram or any of that. It wasn't for anybody else. It was just seemed like a nice platform for me to record my journey of building this bike. And I guess Instagram wasn't as big as it is now back then. And anyway, a couple of I posted some pictures of the finished bike, and then a couple of the big influencer sort of pages and sites got hold of it. And pictures were going viral, and all of a sudden my follower count's going a bit crazy. And people liked it, you know. I took it to Malay Mile, the very first one I went to, just for me to ride around on at the mile. And one of the guys said, I think one of the wardens saw me taking it off the back of the van and went, "We need to put this on display, mate." And he called Rob over and Johnny, and they put it in. They decided they were going to put it in front of the Malay Mile sign in the middle of the sort of metropolis, they call it.
Yeah.
So it sat there all weekend, and it got so many people taking photographs of it and a lot of attention. And then they parked the Malay truck behind it, and that photograph went a bit crazy. And that's what started it. And then I built another one. So I'd only finished that a couple of months, and I thought, right, I'm building another one. So I built a scrambler the same way.
Yeah.
I built a scrambler version of the same bike, British Racing Green and the Black Cafe Racer. And then the next year they were both there at Malay again. Went down really well. And then I thought, right, I'm having this. So I sold them two. Decent amount of cash, and I used that money to start building more bikes and setting up, getting a proper workshop set up, and it all sort of steamrolled from there, and it's just kept sort of growing, and I keep putting the money back in, and until I had a decent setup. Of course, I was working full time at that point, so I could put all the money back into getting set up, So that's
because at the beginning, like when I first obviously started following you, and you were doing them, like, to me, your 125s have that. They have almost like that distinguished gentleman vibe, if that makes any sense. Like this, like a higher finesse. I'm probably not explaining it the greatest, but like you could tell one of your bikes straight away just with the fact that it was just so, almost had a vintage vibe going on,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That, and like you could just see that, like obviously the way you rebuilt the wheels and you respoke to them, and just
it's all about the wheels, right?
Detail.
It's all about them 72 spoke wheels on them 125s.
They're insane, mate.
It's the first thing people notice. When you've done 140 spokes, you've dismantled them, got them all refurbished, and then you've respoked them, rebuilt them. By the time you've done that, you are sick of those wheels, I tell you.
I can imagine. Are they new hubs then?
Yeah, they're brand new. They're not stock Honda. I actually buy them.
I didn't think so. Yeah.
I buy them as a complete unit from a supplier in Hong Kong. I've got a very good supplier in Hong Kong now, and I buy them from there. And then, but they're not particularly fit for purpose. Not good enough for me anyway. So I spend a lot of time. I completely dismantle them. And I go and get them fully powder coated and all that sort of stuff. And then you have to swap out all the bearings and make your own spacers and all that sort of stuff to make them fit. And then, obviously rebuild them and balance them and get them properly trued, which is a nightmare on a 72 spoke wheel. But you put the work in. I've always said, if anyone finds them from a dealer, don't put them on the bike unless you've respoked and trued them, because they just get thrown together in a factory, like a lot of things, a lot of parts you can get from China. And so they take a lot of work, but they've kind of become my signature on those little bikes. So I'm grateful to them, but they are a pain in the backside.
Because I know, because normally, well, by the way it looks from the outside, you were usually booked up for a quarter of a year, and you open the books like 3 times a year to build the 125s. Usually, that's how it appears.
Well, at one point, I couldn't build the 125s fast enough, and they were kind of keeping the business flowing. We might have skipped a bit, but they were. My 125s were like my bread and butter, and I'm at the point now where I mean, the quality remains the same, and the quality is getting better and better every time. But I can build them in my sleep almost. I know the CG 125 backwards. There's another guy, Thomas at Benzin Cafe Racers. He does a similar thing with the same model of bikes, and we call ourselves the CG Whisperers because we don't know about them little bikes between us,
Because I remember messaging you a couple of years ago, because I'd already spoke to you a few times. Well, I remember when you did the certain paint that you use on the engine, and you told me all the tricks on how to get that high gloss finish with the heat paint. And then I messaged you one day, and I was like, Jonathan, my friend's got a CG125 and the front caliper's knackered. I can't find one. And your reply was, yeah, good luck. and then
because
you continued to say to me, you were like, I don't buy a project if the front, because it's the threads that go in the caliper, isn't it? You pretty much said, I don't buy a project if the front caliper's fucked. And I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah, I learned from that first bike. I learned so much from that first build, and one of the lessons was that front CG calipers are like the proverbial rocking horse. You cannot find them anywhere, and it's about 300 quid if you want one from Honda. So that was my first. Oh yeah, that was my first mistake. So I won't. Nowadays, I don't buy a donor bike. I'm lucky that, you know, if I can't ride the donor bike in to my garage, I don't want it, you know, and that's been a big learning curve for me. So sort of gone are the days of me dragging them off scrap heaps or you know, unfinished projects. That's been a big lesson to learn. This BMW behind me was MOT'd and I rode it. You know, I took it out for a ride and enjoyed it a bit before. So I'm lucky at that. I've learned to spend more money on the bike because it saves you in the long run. Yeah, you know.
Because I know we've jumped forward here, because I want to go back, because if I'm right in being a person that's followed you for a while, I'm sure you built I can't remember the name of it, the CB750 that was blasted all over the internet.
You mean the 515, the Northman?
Sorry, the 550. Yeah, because you built the 550 first, and the Northman. Yep, upside down forks, and it was all over I remember, because I followed that build, because obviously I was, you know, I remember you'd finished your 125s and you were building a Northman, and that made it to the bike shed, didn't it, as well?
Yeah, it did. That was my. When I did those two, I finished the two CGs, and I was on with another one of those, another two of those. But while I had the money and while I was still working, I wanted to put all that money back into one bike. I wanted to see what I could do with the right budget. And the Northman cost me about 15k before I got my spanners out. So that's not including time. That's parts. And, you know, I spent $5,000 on a proper engine refurb. It had a racing refurb on it. It had like titanium head pistons in it and all kinds of crap. It was stunning, but it was a $6,000 engine rebuild, $5,000 or $6,000. D&M Engineering down in Newark, they were amazing. And then obviously all the Jhullmoto front end, the GSXR stuff. So we had a Gixxer front end with the Jhullmoto conversion kit. Olin's rear suspension. I mean, I just threw cash at that build. But there was a hell of a lot of fabrication in it as well. So hours on top. You know, it was a 20k bike by the time it was finished.
Yeah, I mean, I remember following the build. It was it was insane. It was a great build, and like you said, because I remember like what I liked about like what you were doing was like the fact that you would take the time to work with what appeared to be newer companies. I believe the company you used with your electrics, with part of your electrics, they were a newer company. They're not Moto Gadget, are they? They were another company. And if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, the Northman had Moto Gadget in it because
was it the batteries? Didn't you use a different company for battery? Sorry, I remember using something that was a newer company, and you were like massively like. Right,
I don't know whether that was probably, you're probably thinking about NWT Europe, and that's a later build.
Right, sorry,
but yeah, for the Northman, I wanted it to be as close as to like a boutique, like proper top end build as I could get.
Yeah.
So it was all Moto Gadget. The blue Moto Gadget blue hadn't been out for that long. The M unit, sorry. And it was anti-gravity batteries. Anti-gravity specialised in race technology, and I used them in every build I've produced has had an anti-gravity lithium battery in it, and I've now got like an account with them and all that sort of stuff. So I do push them a bit. But yeah, so yeah, the Northman was all Bluetooth, which was, I always said to people when I'm talking to bike builders, why on earth does your motorbike want to have Bluetooth? There's no point. And I used to get quite angry about it, but I put one in this anyway because people expect it, right? And then I'd come to the end of the build and I'd booked a day on a dyno, like a really high, really sort of famous around here, dyno tuner. And I'd booked, it was going to cost me about £800 for the day, right? And I turned up at this place and we got the bike on it, up the ramp, off the van, up the ramp, and we got it. And we got to the point where we're going to start the bike and I'm going, where's my keys? And I'd left my keys. I'd driven an hour and a half with this to get to the place. And I left my keys. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to be paying like £200 an hour just to drive back and get the keys. And then I suddenly remembered I can start the bike off my phone.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So I ignition on, hit the button. So we dynoed the bike all from, all using my phone to start it, which was,
that's cool.
That's why you need Bluetooth on a bike.
Because it's got, so I have a key story. So I'd got home and I got off my bike and gone inside, and next thing I need to go back out, and I couldn't find the key. So I ring my brother-in-law and I'm like, look, I can't find the key. And he's come round and I had to go to work. I was on a night shift, and we're hunting around for my key, and he's like, right, I'll pull the ignition barrel apart. So, so I could get in and just flick it on and start the bike. I was like, well, that's all well and good until I run out of fuel, because obviously I've got a lock on the fuel cap. So he does all that for me. And then the next thing is, all right, I'm off to go to work, pick me crash helmet up. And somehow the key I'd let go of it in my hand, or however, and it's dropped inside where the strap is on the crash helmet, and it was wedged in there. So as I picked it up, and as you do, when you like pull your strap, like you pull them apart to put it over your head, it dropped out. I couldn't fucking believe it. So I pulled this ignition barrel apart, like to get this thing started. But yeah, that's my story on a key scenario.
Well, it wouldn't have been a problem. You wouldn't have a 125 dyno, but it wouldn't have been a problem on any other bike. But because that had the M unit in it and it had the keyless go and all, the key fob and all that, there was no way I was going to start taking the electrics apart. And I couldn't have got to it very easily anyway.
No.
So that wasn't an option, but thankfully the Bluetooth.
So what happened to the Northman then?
The Northman. No, it wasn't. That was me, but I had sold it before it was finished.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I had a guy that came visiting me in the workshop, and he was in and ahhing about build, and he was about to book me to build him a similar bike. And I phoned him up, and I just said, well, the Northman's nearly finished. Why don't you just buy that? Because he kept coming and seeing me build it and going, oh, can you put that on my bike? Can you put that on my bike? Can you put this on my bike? And I'm like, well, I can, but your price is going up and up and up. And then eventually I rang him and I just said, you know what, why don't you just buy the Northman? It's got everything on you want. And he did. And he's local. He's only in Leeds. So it's awesome. Nice. It's nice to have it. Yeah,
No, because you're Doncaster way, aren't you?
Pontefract.
So, yeah.
Between Wakefield and Leeds, so just
that's not my brother-in-law lives in Wakefield. Yeah, I'm over near. I'm literally between Hull and York.
Oh, you're not far away then. I did not know that. Far, well, why? How come you haven't popped round yet?
Well, first of all, thanks for asking. I'll definitely. I'll cover. You'll regret it. I'm an annoying fucker.
Oh yeah, right.
I'm that person that you wish you're like, fucking hell, why did I let him round?
No, you're welcome to come and say hello whenever you like.
But because I built the bike I ride at the moment, I've got a 1987 ZX10 that I built.
Right.
And that's I call it like a hybrid in the respect that the back end's like cafe racer, so it's your standard universal Chinese cafe racer style seat with the hump, the leather. The wrapped in leather generic seat, and then the front end's Renthals. Just because I can't do clip-ons, I can't do the whole. And I'm not a big guy, but for me, it's just scrunched over a bike with clip-ons. It's not for me. It would warrant the bike. It would make the bike look a lot better with a nice set of like anodized, clean, nice machined clip-ons. But I can't do it, Jonathan. It's just not for me. It's not for me.
You've ridden a calf racer. I mean, the Northman was so much fun. I mean, that was a powerful little bike. I say little, it was a 550.
Yeah.
But we were getting, I think we had 50 brake horse on the back wheel.
That's good going, isn't it?
It's not bad going for a 550, and you'd normally, and it's obviously it's 4-cylinder.
Yeah.
But they only came out of the factory with 40 on the engine side of it, so
Wow. Wow.
And it was half the weight than the factory bike. So
yeah, for sure.
You put all that on the back wheel, and your front's going up if you're not careful. So like I told the customer, right, be careful with this because it feels like a small bike, but there's a lot of power there. And I'd put the Murray carbs on it as well.
I was going to say what carbs have you got on it?
Yeah, so we'd gone 4 into 2 massive McCuneys, and Murray carbs is incredible stuff. I put them on the 752 in the end. But and to put them carbs on, they recommend that you upgrade your clutch because they're that powerful that they can blow the clutch out. Yeah. So all this is going on this bike, and I said to the customer, right, just be careful. And he was like, yeah, I've ridden bikes all my life, I'll be fine. So I thought nothing of it. A few days later, I get a phone call, and he's shaking, and I can hear him shaking. He goes, Johnny, I nearly came off the back of the bike. I full throttled it out of a roundabout, and the front wheel came up, and I've never been so scared in my life.
Wow.
And I said, well, take a minute just to calm down. But I did tell you.
Yeah. What year is that, Jonathan?
1970. It was a 1978, I think.
Okay.
77, 78. They only made it for 1 year, that model.
Really?
Right. They changed it up loads in the 70s.
Yeah.
So for some things, like silly things like the petrol tank cap, loads of stuff like that was like really hard to get hold of.
Okay. Okay.
Those silly little things that you think would not be a problem actually were,
Who did your paint? Was it paint by Matt? I don't know why name's popped into my yes. All right, yeah. Matt's insane. What a dude. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know his work. I've
been so lucky where I am, Pontefract. Yorkshire is like, honestly, it's capital of bike building. It's incredible the resources we have on our doorstep here. I can throw a stick in it, a powder coater in Pontefract. I mean, they're everywhere. But I threw my stick and I hit one of the best around. And Dan from K&M is absolutely brilliant, and he looks after me. So I can't recommend him enough. But yeah, Matt. Actually, on my first bike, I used a different painter. But then he retired, and he wasn't taking any more. So I found Matt, and then never looked back. I mean, his attention to detail, his skill level. And a lot of people were giving me grief for farming things out when I first started building. But I could paint a tank, sure. But Matt's been doing it full time for however many years. He's top of his game. Why wouldn't I get him to paint my tanks? And I think as a builder, you've got to be prepared to farm a few things out. If you're a business anyway, especially
absolutely.
If you're running a business, you have to be very careful with your time. And sure, I could paint a tank, but I wouldn't get those results, and it'd take me so long, I'd never get anything built.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there.
Oh yeah.
But that's awesome.
He painted one of my friends. My friend is having a pan head built. And right. Matt's done the paint job on my friend's bike, and it's the bike's not finished yet. But when Matt released his book, so my friend, like, he bought the book obviously off of Matt, and he's scanning through it, and my friend's tank's in there, and he's like, he's so chuffed with that.
Cool.
Like proper chuffed that he's like, and it's only
I
a
don't-
minimalist. It's like 70s style flame, real narrow, real skinny flame. Like, you know, where it doesn't lead into the front. It kind of comes back round on itself. You know, like simple flame.
Yeah, I mean, the Northman didn't make it in the book, unfortunately, but the skill level he went with that bike, for me, it was perfect. I mean, we had we had high gloss, like mirror, you know, glass gloss finished tank with this sort of pinstriped, surrounded matte black, and then he stenciled the Northman, the name across it, and it in gold, and it was just perfect. I mean, it looked like it had been printed by a machine. You know, it was that accurate and beautiful.
Yeah, his work is cool. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But so obviously after the Northman, you then where did you head from that?
Well, after enjoying the Northman, there was a load more 125s going out. I mean, I've lost track of how many of them are built. But the next, I guess, the next big one must have been the 750, the CB 750.
Yeah.
I am losing track now. That was an American import. I managed to get hold of that bike from California. It was a 1981 CB 750 dual overhead cam. That was a beast. I mean, that engine weighed something like 15 stone on its own. I mean, they are ridiculously heavy bikes. That one, I enjoyed it, but the customer had his own. It was a commission, that one.
Okay.
And the customer had very specific ideas about how he wanted it to look. And that was difficult for me, just because I then had to talk to him about why we couldn't do certain things.
Okay.
And there was one thing, I don't think he'll mind me mentioning. He'd seen on Instagram like these cafe racers with the back wheel that far away from the seat. Do you know what I mean? From the back tire, real close.
That's not going to work.
And I was like, he said, I want it like, you know, centimeters. And I said, well, we can't, you know, we either make it a hardtail or put so much preload on the back, it might as well be one. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to think about when you're bouncing around. I said, it's not going to be safe. I'll get it as close as I can, but I'm not going to give you a bike that's not safe and rideable. So we had those sort of conversations, but it turned out all right in the end. Like I said, it perhaps wasn't the way I'd have built it, but it ended up being real pretty. I questioned his colour scheme at first. In my mind, I didn't question him, but he said he wanted this sort of pistachio colour that was like, he said it was an old Lambretta colour from the 60s.
Yeah.
So we managed to find it. Paint by Matt found the exact colour code, and we did it, and it was actually stunning, a really stunning colour. All brown leather and all that sort of stuff. And that ended up at the Scottish Motorcycle Show, so it must have been all right.
That's cool. And again, it kind of goes down that to me, like that distinguished, elegant, gentleman, vintage style look that kind of I feel that seems to be something. Because I mean, I can imagine as a builder, it's quite cool to be known as, oh, you're that guy that does that style. And I can imagine it's hard to become that guy as well with how many people are building. Yeah,
I mean, the whole sort of, I call it the new wave calf racer scene that's happened over the last sort of 6-7 years. It's very cool, the bike shed scene, if you like. I was more interested in the sort of the original cafe racers of the 1960s.
Yeah.
The ton up boys, all that, and how they would strip everything off the bike and that philosophy that's on my website.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make the bike go fast, stop fast, or in my case, road legal, it's gone. It's not on the bike.
Yeah.
And I call myself a minimalist builder. I like to see the bones of a bike, and I like to show off the engines. the engines and the frames are always the star of the show for me. And I don't want anything else. And I have a lot of sort of the purist restoration classic motorcycle guys that are going, well, what's with that big hole in the back? Why haven't you filled that with something? And I said, well, I want that. That's what I call the golden triangle, the area under the seat. I don't want a big airbox in there or electrics or what, you know. And then in the same breath, they'll say, well, where did you hide the battery? And I'm going, well, you know, go find it.
Yeah, exactly.
To make I learned pretty early on to make a bike look minimal.
It's hard.
It's one of the biggest challenges, yeah. And to be able to hide everything that is necessary.
So I got a friend of mine that's asked, what's your favourite part of a build?
It changes depending on where I am. I love you see, when I get into stuff, the different parts of the builds, when I get into them, I'm loving it. But sometimes it takes me a while to sort of gee up the courage to get into it. Like, I love the fabrication side of it. So I love taking a frame off, chopping it up, restyling it, making it how I want it to be. The K100's brilliant for that, and the old CBs and CGs are wonderful what you can do with them. But it takes me a while to sort of want to do it because it's really physical, dirty work, you know, and you spend hours covered in grinding dust and, you know, you're welding masks on all day. And it's you don't kind of love it till you're doing it, if you like. Yeah. And then I used to dread electrics. Like a lot of builders hate electronics, but I get properly in the zone now, and I really enjoy it. And as infuriating it is, it appeals to my sort of problem solving. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, right? I'm pretty sure if the facility's there to be tested while you were young, I'm pretty sure I'd be on the spectrum somewhere. I'm very. I like symmetry. I'm obsessed with symmetry and order and everything in its place, and that shows in my builds, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I get into the electric side of it. My hobby before I building bikes, I used to do gaming computers.
Okay.
And I used to get too crazy into that as well.
Do you find that the electrics are more enjoyable with the likes of the Moto Gadget stuff, or are you still equally as passionate with trying to salvage a wiring loom? Right now, I don't. I'm at the point now where I build my own looms,
unless like the CRF I've got here. We'll talk more about it probably in a bit. I've got a almost brand new CRF 300 Rally. Very lucky to have it.
Wow.
I'm leaving the electrics with that. I'm trying not. All I'm going to do is swap out the lights and the indicators and all that sort of stuff, because it's got all the ABS and all that, and it's got a fantastic sort of digital electronic system anyway. I'll be swapping the battery and a few bits, but I'm not going to touch that loom. Don't think there's any point. But when you're rebuilding a 50-year-old classic bike, you know, the loom is to shit. You need to replace it if you can. So I completely rebuild the looms myself. The Moto Gadget often causes more problems than it's worth. I've battled with a few of them now, and when they're working, they're great, but they're not infallible. They're not, and they're hard work. When I did the Northman, I said I'd never use one again, but people expect them. They're what customers ask for quite a lot. So yeah, and I can see the benefit of them in a classic bike, but I wouldn't swap. I wouldn't put one in the CRF. I don't think there's any point in that. No. The benefits, the benefits aren't outweighing the negative. Well, I can't remember what I was going to say.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I'm with you.
But yeah, NWT is a different story though, and that's probably what you thought about this new company. We stumbled across NWT Cyclotronic and they do a similar thing to what Motor Gadget was doing, but they do it better in a lot of ways and for a lot of better price. So, you know, and then a full Motor Gadget system puts 1,500 quid on your build.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is, right? But if you're building a bike that's worth 20 grand, then that's justifiable.
Yeah.
But like the NWT Cyclotronics stuff, their X21, it's incredibly user friendly. They set out right from the start to cater for amateur builders and bike enthusiasts, and it's so easy to use. It's all just plug in and play, and it's reliable, crucially. And the support's fantastic too. Like you buy all the kit and then you just email them, tell them what you want to do, and they'll send you out a full wiring loom based on your donor bike, including their tech. And it's dead easy to read, dead easy to make sense of. So when I can, I use them now. And Al is a very good friend of mine, Al, that Bashio builds, and he runs NWT Europe. And he's the close friend. We talk once a week, once every couple of weeks.
No, that's awesome. So that was kind of like, for me, was like, because I've like I say, my first bike I built with my dad. I was 15. I built a 1983 Suzuki GP 125 two-stroke, and like I was 15 years old, so like, the bike was already massively older than me, and I built that in Spain. So trying to get parts for a GP in Spain, so like Suzuki in Spain didn't even really, they thought I was speaking a foreign language when I kind of tried to talk about the bike. And then I ended up having to source all the parts that I needed from CMS in Holland. Now, it's costing me, back in like 2008, it was costing me €50 a go to get parts posted.
Wow.
You know? And so I built that kind of like, and what was really crazy was like social media only just really, I mean, making me sound old, I'm only 32, but social media Facebook was only really just starting to gain its own movement, and bikes, to my knowledge, weren't huge on there. But I built like what I call like a street tracker. So I had Renfalls on it. What I call it, de-seamed the tanks, you know, where the bead is. I de-beaded all that, so I filled all that in with fiberglass filler and smoothed it all out and things like that. I built my tailpiece was belly pan off of FZ6 turned upside down, chopped and shaped, and like it was never really seen in Spain at the time. And we did like a metal flake dark blue with a muscle stripe down the middle, and you know that was, and then like to see it now, it's kind of like the in thing now. I mean, I don't have the bike anymore. I got rid of it. It was a problem from the beginning, that bike. It was one of them bikes that no matter what I seemed to change, no matter what I did, there was always something else. And it was an experience. I mean, by far one of the best experiences of my life, to build a bike with my dad. You know, I set off to build a bike to ride from where I lived in Spain to Faro, to the bike rally in Portugal. Set off and broke down, but what an incredible experience. You know, it's something I'll never forget. My dad being like 65 years old, growing up on the old generation of bikes that didn't handle, that you had to keep them going, and you know, incredible. I mean, to be honest, I've only ever owned one bike that's younger than me. I mean, my 125 that I'm going to be rebuilding on social media, on YouTube, is a 2010 Jhullmoto 125. Everything else is older than me. You know, the ZX10's an 87. I've got an 81, I believe, CB Super Dream 125, which so many people turn around and say, no, you haven't. I'm like, yes, I have. They never made a Super Dream 125. I'm like, yes, they did. You know, and honestly, I'd have like these old timers, and then you know, and I try not to be disrespectful to them, like, because obviously they fundamentally know a lot more than me. But I'm having to Google it. Like, they know they only made a 250 and a 400 with the 5-star comp wheels. I'm like, they made a 125 with a monoshock, and it looked ugly as hell. You know, and the wheels that they used were very similar to the CX wheels. You know, the 3-piece wheels with the rivets in with the 6 spokes. I mean,
I got you.
Obviously, you know what I'm on about, but one ugly looking bike, and so that's a project that's been ongoing forever, trying to get hold of.
Yeah.
And I mean, by the looks of it, from what I'm working out, they seem to be a known problem with the top ends. It broke a lifter, snapped the top of the lifter, snapped the top of the valve stem, and somehow never hit a piston, which is absolutely incredible. But again, parts for it just aren't cheap.
No, I mean, that's why I went for the little ones, the CG, and I went because the engines are bulletproof in those things, and you can throw anything at them. Super reliable. I mean, Honda put them in bloody concrete mixers and all sorts of stuff. I mean, they're built to work. And I've put 190cc barrels on them, and they've been absolutely beautiful, you know. So that was definitely a thing.
Because I asked you about them
bike.
Barrels. I remember asking you about because again, like it'll be a couple of years ago, but I remember when I think it must have been one of your first 190s that you put up on Instagram, because you put me in contact with the guy that you were buying them from, because my next motor, being that it's a copy of the CG engine, obviously I just at the time didn't have the money to get it, like buy one, but I fancy the idea of putting a big bore kit on it. A lot of people are saying with the Chinese bikes not to. They're saying that they're rubbish, but I've owned this bike for 11 years, and I'm running a 27mm Molt race carb on it, straight through pipe, EGR delete, and when I do ride it, which I haven't ridden it for years, it gets ridden flat out everywhere because it's a 125, and I can honestly say has never missed a beat, that engine.
Well, that's cool. That's very cool.
Lucky.
yeah, maybe. I think what I was going to say, the other thing is looking at, if you're going to attempt to build like mine as well, it's looking at the bones of the bike. Like, you see so many people go for the Suzuki GN.
Yeah.
And that is and forgive me, Suzuki fans, please don't hate me, but the GN is a bloody ugly bike before you've done anything to it. I mean, it looks like somebody sat in the middle and broke it. Like,
the frame in the middle,
tank goes down, seat goes out. Yep. It's just bizarre, like, bit of design. So you take all the bits off, the panels and the seat, and you're looking at the frame and you're thinking, if anyone manages to build a beautiful GN 125, then I'd be very happy to see it. But, at least with the CGs, you've got parallels. I like to see parallels with the road, like my frame bottom roads, and for the calf race sort of style, then that's the best. The BMW's changed that a bit because it's more of a
it's got
a bit more slanty, a bit forward, like a street bike, but picking your donor bikes carefully. But if you're, if you're an amateur builder and you've given one, then you work with what you got, right?
And that's pretty much me. Like with my ZX10, like I've got the original ZX10, and for people that know what they look like, that was one fugly looking bike. Oh my god! I mean, and a heavy. I mean, the frame's probably, I would say, a meter wide. Like you can fit your hand between the tank and the frame. There was loads of daylight. I mean, absolutely animal of a bike, but it was an aluminium frame, aluminium swinger subframe as well, so sort of like all welded in. And what I was able to do was my little brother-in-law, he was only like 15. He was at Tech College in Leeds, and he had access to lathes. So I was like, look, I need you to machine me some adapters. And I cut the subframe off, literally left the stubs on the original frame, and I got him to machine me some adapters, and I was able to insert the adapters into the alley frame, and then he turned me them down to, I think it was like 15 mil, which then enabled me to build a complete subframe from steel. So hence how I was able to go with the conventional Cafe Racer style seat. I've got the loop with the lights with the internal lights in the frame, and then what I did is I did the subframe to match the color of the tank, to kind of bring a bit of color into the back of the bike. And you know, I was so lucky. But like I say, I got gifted the bike. Well, I say I gifted it. I pestered my friend until he gave me the bike. It was just sat in the garage. It was sat in the garden.
Yeah.
And it was a full bike, and it had been pulled apart. There was something wrong with it, or he'd moved on to another project. I can't really remember. And I was just like, look, give me that bike. I want to work on it. I want to build this. I want to build this. And I just kept going until one day he pretty much just turned up with the bike. You know, he's like, there you are. Leave me alone. Like, off you go.
Right.
You know,
just made yourself a nuisance until he gave you it.
Like I said earlier, you'll find you'll end up regretting saying, why haven't you turned up? Because I'm that dude. I'm like, here he fucking comes. You know,
Right.
but like the history of that ZX10 was, so his stepson bought it to learn how to drag race. And so the bike's been at Santa Pod, it's been at Melbourne, Elvington, and it competed in the amateur class of straightliners. And I've got to get the printouts, because the printouts are quite impressive. You know, the runs, the quarter mile, the half mile, and the story goes like, when my friend's stepson was learning how to drag race, it turned some heads, because for its age, it was at that time it would have been 30 years old. It's going back about 5-6 years. I say it's a 37-year-old bike, so yeah, just over 30 years old. It's really nippy, you know. And I mean, riding on the road, and this is what kind of similar to the story of your friend with the Northman, was I rang my friend up and I was like, look, I said, you're not going to guess what's just happened. And he's like, I said, I set off from a bike cafe. I said, wound it on, you know, didn't pin it, wound it on, second gear, didn't slip the clutch, said second gear, wound it back on again. I said, and before I even finished, he said, don't tell me the front wheel just came up. I said, yeah. I said, how do you know? He said, because that's what it did when I had it. It had this tendency, about 8,000 RPM, it would just literally and it would just keep going. And
take off.
And honestly, and like kind of tying in with the story of of it being like a learning drag bike, was we don't know whether it's been cammed and things like that, because it hunts as well, you know, like almost is it an off balance carb, or is it got high lift cams, because it has that hunting sound to it on idle, you know. And the way I describe it to people, and I've probably bored everyone on the podcast because I've spoke about it a lot, is it behaves like an angry two-stroke, but with a scary amount of torque. It has that unpredictability of a power band of the, you know, and it just it's almost unenjoyable in some respects.
Yeah, I get you. Talking about two strokes, I've got I think it's Suzuki. Was it I want to say 500T. It was like a 2-cylinder 500cc two-stroke that was supposed to be like death on wheels.
Is it? It's not the X7, is it? X7?
Possibly, yeah. And I've seen a few pictures of them, and they look beautiful things. Like back in the day, they look. I'd love to do something with one of them. The idea of that like delights me.
Yeah.
So
70s two-strokes are getting expensive, though, aren't they?
Well, I found one for 2.5 in reasonable nick. You know, all rolling and compression and everything. So you might find that that rocks up at some point this year.
That'd be cool. That'll be cool.
But yeah, that's it, my Bill. That's overtaken the Harley desire. On my list. But I want to build a race bike too, a classic racing bike.
Yeah, they've made a big recite the old Vincent. Is it the Vincent style? What they call the fairings? Rickman fairing, the Rickman with the bubble and like that. Yeah. They become a thing, haven't they?
Well, I don't know whether you know, a lot of my followers might, that I've been working for a company called Minnovation. So I've been lucky enough to be doing some freelancing, and they have a works race team, classic work racing team.
Yeah, I've seen I've seen the videos. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Minnovation Racing are the most successful team in the CRMC. That's the classic racing motorcycle club. The most successful team in the history of that club. And like last year, they came home with like 5 championship wins. Now they build G50s from scratch, matchless G50s. every aspect, like brand new bikes. They had all the drawings. They've reimagined the Matchless G50. The engines are just incredible. What they get out of these engines, they've been completely rebuilt.
Yeah.
To the original drawings. And what Martin, the head of Innovation Racing, Martin Page, what he can do with squish is just ridiculous. He gets there's a very good reason his bikes win, apart from the fact they got a cracking rider, Joe Barton.
When you say
rider.
squish, you're regarding to the squish as in the tolerance between the piston and the top of the cylinder, is that correct?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. So it's different to compression. It's about how you compress those gases and what it's doing before it explodes.
And the engine, and for the people that don't know, these engines, they start life as is it a Norton? Am I right? Or
they're based on it's Norton, but the Innovation, they're building their own, so they have them casted, and then everything else is made in house. So they machine everything.
It's crazy.
The fact that's what works racing teams were, right? You'd have have an engineering factory that's busy doing another job, but then it'll have a racing team with it, and that's how Works Racing used to be.
Yeah.
So Innovation actually manufacture cooling jets for the mining industry, so and tunnel boring equipment. So if you can picture those big machines that dig the London Underground tunnels, like just it's those
and engines like that compared to that. It's
so they make these little cooling jets that keep those big teeth on these big boring equipment. But so attached to them is Innovation Racing, which is I'm so lucky to have that, because Martin's knowledge, I've learned more there in the last 9 months than I have anywhere else through my whole time.
That's crazy.
And there's nothing he doesn't know. And then there's Mick as well, who works there. He's full time on the bikes, and he was the lead mechanic on Patsy Quick's first Dakar attempt in 2003.
Wow.
He's been a top level motorbike mechanic for 40 years. So just having that
knows
knowledge.
His stuff.
Oh God, yeah, and being around those people, being lucky enough to be around those people 2 days a week, soaking up all that knowledge, having access to their skill base.
It's a different world, isn't it? And I got a friend originally from Watford. I've known him since I was 9. I've known him most of my life. He's my unofficial adopted granddad, and he's what was really cool for me recently is I finally got to go down to the ACE-CAF. I've never been, and my friend that I went with, he's being that he's originally from Watford, his stomping ground, his playground was the North Circular, and we've gone into the ACE-CAF and gone up and looked at the book that they've got in there, where the memorabilia stuff is. He's flicking through the book, and he stops on a page and he goes, "Look," and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "That's me." And I'm like, "Wow!" And he just said it so calmly. I'm like, "Mate, like that's part of history." And like, he has a A10, so he has a BSA A10, a Goldie replica. And I'm not even going to attempt to talk British bikes because I don't know anything about them. What I do know is this thing is immaculate, and like you can stand like 2 meters, 3 meters back from the wheel, and you can still feel the blap. It's blap, 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 blap. You know what I mean? You can feel every blap out of that. The compression on it is. I started it and I struggled to start this thing, and like as we're going around the like they call them the bends before the Iron Bridge down to the Ace, he's telling me like the stories of back in the day, and it's like, wow, what a time to have been alive, and like with his Lewis leather on, and his scarf flap, like the stories are incredible. And he used to race as well, and like my first set of levers when I riding mini motos in Spain as a kid was his original set of Lewis levers, like the one-piece Lewis levers, and it was like, I would have loved it back then,
like mixed stories are amazing, and I was trying to summarize it on Instagram, but I couldn't really do it justice. I mean, I could listen to that guy all day. I mean, he's telling me, laughing his head off while he's telling me that, you know, he got trapped in a minefield, but he was dying to take a crap. So he said he's getting out of his truck when they've been told they're not allowed to because there's mines everywhere, and the truck in front's already been blown up, back axle off with a landmine.
Bloody hell.
Everyone's safe, by the way, but he says he got off and he's trying to have a poo, and he was telling everyone they got to be silent because if he hears a ping, like a firing pin go, he's running. It must have been the most terrifying dump anyone's ever taken. But yeah, that guy's stories are nuts. I was lucky. I won't wax on about them too much, but they obviously works racing's really secretive, right? You've got to be, you know, it's got to be keeping the game. So I have been lucky to see these pistons and the engines and what makes them as good as they are. But they let me in with the dyno testing one of them. It was a brand new bike, and it was going. They were shipping it out to a company, to a private individual in Belgium. So they built a G54. This customer, and it's its first time on the dyno. And I don't know, have you ever seen a bike on a dyno?
Yeah.
Right, so you're looking at a dyno, and you know, you're looking at the line, and it's a bit up and down, and you know, and then it starts to rise, and then you're getting a bit of a, you know, and you're looking for that sort of rise and it being even. I've never seen a dyno like this. It was a perfect, like you couldn't hand draw it any finer. It was just a perfect curve, right up to 60 brake horsepower on these little things. I think it was at about 8,000 revs, but it looked like it had been drawn. It was that perfect. It's like, how can an engine do that? You know, there's no glitches,
it's incredible, isn't it?
Nothing. Brand new engine. It's like, wow.
And that's just like you say, like years of experience and like just knowing what you're doing. I mean, and I mean, you know yourself, like you know when an engine's on point, like it even smells different. Regardless, 2-stroke or 4-stroke,
smells
it doesn't
different,
matter.
sounds
it
different,
smells different.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, like with the mini motors, like I never had money to chuck in big parts and big bore kits and better expansion chambers, but my dad, obviously being like of that generation of fizzies, I mean, his first bike was an FS1E. He, you know, took me engine apart. And I had a Chinese mini moto, and he's there mirror polishing the exhaust port and deburring all the flange on the exhaust. And I mean, the other kids that had the big bore kits and the carbon Kevlar race line clutches would nip me off the start. But where I lived in Spain, we had a big track, so by the time they've got down the back of the straight, I'm overtaking them, and they're all looking at this going, right, well, it's got the, you know, where the Chinese just put the kinks in the exhaust. It didn't even bend. It just kinked in the exhaust, which was affecting everything. But these, all my school friends and people I knew could not fathom how I was beating them at the top end. And I just say, and I'd say to them, like, my dad just spent an hour and a half polishing the exhaust port, deburring some bits, messing around with the carb, and it just ran, like, and no one could fathom, like, but what have you done? And it's like, well, that I've just told you what we've done, you know.
Yeah.
Like you say, it just ran different, you know.
But yeah, well, like Martin does all his porting by hand, and you know, same every time. He's just done it that often that he just muscle memory, and you know, he can report a bike with no, you know, just knows what he's doing, and it gets it bang on. So like I said, like being around those people, it used to be when I first started building bikes, it used to be aesthetics that would drive me, and you know, what the design in my head, getting it out of my head into reality, that was what drove me. Now it's still a bit of that, but I'm passionate about the engineering side of it as well now.
Yeah.
The more I get into that, you know, I've invested in a lot of kit here. I've got a decent lathe, milling machine, and all that sort of stuff, so I can start making my own stuff. But if I can't do it here, I can now do it at Minovation. You know, we've got 4 ST30s. We've got a full room full of the old sort of Bridgeports, and and everything like that. But we've got all these crazy CNC machines, millions of pounds worth of CNC stuff.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, just having access to that sort of thing has just upped my game considerably.
So you considering a British engine build? Is that in the pipe?
I don't know. I want to do a Triumph. I've never done a Triumph before, so I really do want that. I mean, keep talking about other people. I'm supposed to talk about my stuff, but I've got Bob Moore, who's a very dear friend of mine, who I discovered right at the start, and his workshops. This is a bit like you said you'd be with me. Like his workshops. About a mile from my front door, so I'm there all the time. I'm like a bad penny with him. Bob's in his 60s, and he's been building competition-winning pre-65 trials bikes for donkey's years, and he ships them all over the world. So he takes Tiger Cub engines and builds bikes around them for the pre-65 circuit. And they're incredible things, brand new oil-filled frames. It's not just an oil-filled frame; it circulates, and it's got like magnet filters and all this sort of stuff that he designed himself. And he does a similar thing with the engines. The only original thing about the engine is the crankcase. Everything, the cases, everything else is him. And he gets incredible torque out of these little engines. And he's like, I'm so lucky to have that guy. He doesn't know about a Triumph, and we talk about all the time. So I do fancy a British bike, but I think I'd like to have a crack at a race bike too. My list is getting too long, isn't it? I mean, I'm supposed to be building
awesome,
for customers.
Mate. It is awesome.
Yeah, but I've got business here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bikes on the go.
Wow.
At the minute. Interestingly, I've not sold a 125 for a long time, for about 9 months. The market seems to have disappeared out of the smaller bikes for the moment. I guess the credit crunch is hitting those sort of people. The cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
I'm still getting orders from those that have the more lucky ones. That have got. So I've got more of the big build stuff, but I'm kind of itching to build a 125 again. I haven't done it for ages.
Yeah, well, that's my foot. I mean, I said on a couple of my podcasts, like people that have known me like before I started doing any of this stuff, like they've asked me like, do you? I bet you prefer the ZX10. I'm like, do you know what? No, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it with the speed cameras everywhere. I mean, the 1079 from York to Hull, it's a painful road. It is like there's speed cameras all the way down, and everyone now is being encouraged to be a grass with their dash cams, and it's taken the enjoyment out of it. I mean, not that I'm one of them dudes that thinks I'm Valentino Rossi on the road. I ride within my limit, but when you're on a bike that literally almost like feels like you just learned how to ride a bike, because it's like blah blah blah, but you know what I mean, it's just you touch the throttle and you come off a roundabout and it looks like you've never touched a geared bike, because it just and it just wants to go, like honest to god, it's so it takes out the enjoyment of it, whereas on my 125 you can just chase it.
I would say exactly the same thing. Like the CB 750 and the Northman were both very powerful bikes. Like the CB 750, I put Murray carbs on that as well. Delcovic 4-into-1 exhaust system. So we were 4-into-2. So let me get this right. 2 carbs into 4 cylinders, into 4, into 2, into 1 exhaust. Yep. There's your numbers, right?
Yep.
This thing, I mean, and the bike was half the weight it should have been. That 750 pulled like a freight train. And it was your face was just, you couldn't take the smile off your face as you throttled it,
Yeah.
But you didn't half know you were riding it. I mean, it was a lump. It was a heavy bike, and after about an hour out on that, an old guy like me, you write in the next day off. You could hardly move. And so you're right. It takes some of the enjoyment out of it, you know. But when you can throw your leg over a 125, a 150, a 190, and just have a laugh, you know, they're so much fun. You can throw them; they're light enough to throw around, and you can just, you know, country roads, bit of green laning if you want,
absolutely,
on a scrambler, you know, country roads or city riding on a calf. You don't need anything much bigger.
No.
You know, and a lot of my 125s, 150s went to London for people, you know, wealthy sort of bankers to zip in and out the city on, feeling like the Steve McQueen, you know.
Yeah,
and
man.
Fair play to them, you know. It's cool. Yeah.
But no, that's it. It's like that's what I know. It's like and that's why I'm bringing my 125 back for a few reasons. One of them being cost of running, 20 quid a year. Well, last time I paid it was like £18 a year road tax. Used about 8 quid a week in fuel, and I mean I have, you know, so it just makes sense. And obviously, being that the reason why I set up what I call 666 Customs is that I'm not looking to like tap into the world like that you're in. I don't want to build bikes to sell. I just want to build my stuff the way I want to build it. I'm a massive believer in like, just because I don't have budget to, I mean I look at the idea of buying Motor Gadget switches for the handlebars. I can't afford them, you know. So hence why my 125 at one point had a exhaust built out of a bed frame. I literally had an old bed behind the shed, 40mm pipe, terribly thin. It made more noise resonating through the pipe than coming out the end of it. But I didn't care, and that's what it was for me. I mean, I had 14 pie cuts from the cylinder wrapping around the down tube of the frame to give me a straight style pipe. I mean, I've got suicide shift, foot clutch. My shifter is just one massive, ridiculous pendulum. There's no pivot point in it. People look at it, and this is what I mean. Like, I'll get some pictures of it. I haven't got it here at the moment, but I'll get some pictures. So to look at my shifter, it's like several S's together. And people have said, "Oh, why is it not just a straight pipe?" And the truth behind it is, if I had a straight pipe, it has way too much throw on it, and it was just I couldn't shift because it's such a small bike. I couldn't shift up because it hit my leg, so I had to put a bend to literally go round my leg. And then I had to put another bend back, otherwise the throw was way too far back. So every S in the lever is actually a deliberate shape. It's to allow me to actually get it to shift. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, you know.
Well, if it works, it works.
It works. Do you know what I mean? And I made it all in my shed, like learning how to weld and for me, one of my biggest things is like when people ask me what is it, like when they don't know what the bike is, I feel like I've achieved what I set out to achieve. The same with the ZX10. I've had people go, "Oh, is it a Z900?" Because it's obviously a lot more narrower than, somewhat narrower than an original ZX10. And it's like, no, it's a ZX10, and like, you know, that's what I get out of it, really. Yeah.
No, I mean, like I said to you before, I like to keep one foot in the shed, even though I'm a pro builder now. I think it's important to have one foot in the shed, so you don't lose that sort of creativity, that sort of problem solving mentality that you had then. I don't want to ever be like an assembler, you know, just buy like tons of off the shelf parts and fit them. That's not bike building. That's just assembling or project managing. You know, if you're farming everything out, like you talk to builders at the bike shed show, and you know the ones that have built every part of the bike and you know, or as much of it as possible. You get that very quickly, but then you talk into one or two people and you've got a stunning bike in front of you and you say, "Oh, that's very clever. How did you do that?" And they say, "Oh, well, so and so did that." And you go, "Oh, well, then how? I love the way you've done the subframe. Your welding's really good." "Oh, I didn't weld that. I sent it out." So, and then all of a sudden you're seeing, actually, this guy hasn't built this bike. He's project managed it, you know. He's thrown a load of cash at it and other people do it for him. So I want to be, you know, keep your foot in shed row, keep your foot, you know, in that sort of creativity, that problem solving, that, you know, I've got like I said, lathes, milling machines. I've got everything I need in here to be able to sort of fix a problem if I come up against one.
Yeah, I mean, what was it like?
Every bike has one. You know, every bike has something you need to solve or something different you need to do.
What was it like going? I mean, I've not been to the bike shed show. You know, it's every year I'm going to get there, and then something comes up, you know, or whatever. And obviously every year I wait for everyone's videos to pop up on YouTube, and it looks incredible. What's it like? What's it like putting a bike on show there? Because it obviously, to me, it seems to be one of the biggest shows in the cafe scene and that style of bike scene, especially.
Yeah, for my style of bike, it's the show. It's the show. So I make sure now that I'm there every year if I can be. It's the big one on my list. I'm hoping I might have, touch wood, 3 bikes there this year for the first time.
Wow.
So I mean, that first time I got in with the Northman and I couldn't believe it. I mean, there is Shed Row and there's a pro category. And there's only so many sort of tickets only so many places for the pro category. So it's a bit of a lottery whether you're going to get in. You submit your bike and then hope somebody likes it. And I got really lucky with the Northman. And I think it was Dan when he was working there and Gareth. And they sort of saw the bike. Dan said, I just wanted to see if you could build it, you know, because I actually hadn't submitted the full bike because I hadn't finished it when I submitted it. I just showed him a picture of a bike I'd quite like to build, like an inspiration picture. And Dan was just like, yeah, I just wanted to see if you could do it. So we gave you a spot, which was great. But yeah, it's all about, especially in the pro category there, it's all about the final 5%, or whether you call it the final 1%. If you're, you know, when you're a bike builder, it's that level of detail. Every bike in there is finished to perfection, you know. Every bike in the pro category is perfect. There's not a mark on it. It's beautiful, every single bit of them, you know. The amateur side of it, Shed Row, slightly different, but still stunning machines, you know. So yeah, it's incredibly intimidating the first time you have a bike there. But I decided I'm just going to enjoy it. So I pretty much spent the whole weekend around my bike, just talking to people, and that's what I really enjoy, just chatting to folks or going out to find other builders. And you know, through that and Malay, I've met some incredible people. Those people that I'd put way up here when I started building, like Jhullmoto and Anthony Partridge and all those sort of people, Stip Knight, and you know, that were regulars at these shows and churned out these stunning builds. And then all of a sudden I'm there with them now, you know. And I have to keep sort of pinching myself a bit when I'm, you know, with those sort of people, like being in the Art of Machine at Malay Mile. And I remember
it's incredible.
The first time I went, I saw a dais in the Art of Machine exhibit with my wife, and I turned to my wife and said, I'm going to have a bike in here one day. And then the next year I did, and then the next year I had 2, and then I'm in my 4th now.
Yes, that's incredible.
And the guys are brilliant, but it's the company you keep when you're in there, you know. That's what both shows are like for me. Just being included in that sort of group is just bizarre, crazy.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, that's kind of like, so like my plan with my podcast is to be able to get to places like this. Like literally the idea is that I want to just set up a little booth with kind of how I'm sat in the corner of my front room now, really, and just collar people and just like kind of absorb what everyone's doing and what everyone's, see, for me with building bikes, because my budget is so small, I felt that there was a gap especially in the social media world, with regarding to custom bikes. Like everyone's building well, everyone. There's loads of different levels of building, but like it seems to be that if you can afford to have build a bike to a certain level, it seems to be more appreciated. And I kind of felt that there was a gap for the small shed builders that weren't necessarily. I know Bike Shed obviously encourage Shed Row and things like that, but
Yeah.
typically there still seems to be that element of, well, that's an expensive part. That's an expensive part. That's an expensive part.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking
Yeah.
there's got to be a gap for the. I mean, like for me, my rev gauge on my ZX10 is an eBay special. There was no wiring diagram. It took me nights upon nights of pausing videos on YouTube to try and work out that the lad that's got a shaky camera footage that support, like
yeah,
barely.
we've all watched some of them.
Do you know what I mean? Trying to, and I just felt that there was that gap. Like I love all custom built bikes, and I appreciate anybody that's built a bike. I even appreciate when a 16-year-old puts an air filter on a bike. Like that to me.
Yeah, because you got to start somewhere.
Do you know what I mean?
Don't get us wrong. Like
no, I know you're not.
There's no snobbery at the Bike Shed show. There's a perceived sort of snobbery, I guess, from people, and you get I hear a lot of negativity about Bike Shed and what they do, but I've experienced nothing but love and joy when I've been down there. There's no there is a lot of bikes with a lot of very expensive parts. I mean, like Power Brick build these absolutely stunning BMWs, like the best BMWs on the planet, in my opinion. They manufacture these parts that are absolutely top of the game. They ain't cheap. I've spent four or five grand on parts for this from Power Brick. Wow. But I'm not a wealthy guy. I struggle to pay my bills every month, and especially as this is now my business, I'm not pulling in 40 grand a year anymore like I used to. I'm barely clinging on a lot of the time. The only reason I get to build bikes like this is because my business model is all commission based.
Yeah.
Apart from my first two bikes and my grass tracker, every bike is commission based. So the client comes to me, tells me what they want. They pay me a 10% build slot deposit that holds their slot for as long as they want it. And then right at the start of the build, they give me 50% of it up front. And that covers the cost of the bike, most of the cost of the build. The final 50% comes on delivery. So my bikes, the build costs covered for me because of the business model I've got. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So if somebody, this is, I don't know whether I need to tell you how much this bike's going to be. It's a lot of money. It's a high ticket bike.
Yeah.
And the first installment covers most of it.
Yeah.
But they are 13 grand in total just in parts before you get your bag of spanners.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
Nuts, isn't it? Yeah. And it mounts up quick.
And this is what I mean. Like again, I don't apologize if I come across like I'm. For me, that's kind of what, like that's what triggered the podcast for me was, like everybody loves the big television shows and that's fundamentally what triggers that desire to create from most of us. I mean, I was an 11-year-old kid watching Discovery Channel, watching Indian Larry build bikes. I mean, Indian Larry is one of my heroes. I mean, I've got his question mark tattooed in my hand, and already on this is my 25th episode. I've been so fortunate to speak to people like yourself, speak to people that knew Larry, and it was like, wow, I mean, and that's kind of like the whole idea was to encourage, like the idea for me was that if one person gets a customer from watching one of my podcasts, it's such a good feeling for me. Like the idea of connecting the small builders as well as being fortunate enough to sit down with somebody like yourself that's putting in crazy long days on big builds and getting the recognition that you rightly deserve. I'm so privileged. Like people say to me, what is it you're wanting to get out of the podcast? And I'm like, I'm literally getting what I wanted out of it. I'm able to sit here and listen to your experiences. Like of what you've built and like the people you've been able to meet, and that excites me. You know, I love that. You know,
well, I've got a lot of advice, I guess, for young builders and for people that are thinking of making the move like I did. But one of the biggest things I did is I put myself out there, and if I got stuck, I reached out to people. And I've spoken to other builders that feel a bit, that they get introverted and they daren't ask for help. They want to figure everything else themselves, but you can't. If you want to learn fast and you want to learn from people, go and make a nuisance of yourself. Go and talk to people. When they see how passionate you are, they'll help you out. You know, like I said, I've been really lucky with Bob and with Martin and Mick and those high-level builders that see you've got a passion for it, see you've got a talent for it, and they help you. They'll do it. They'll bend over backwards to help you, and you know, never take advantage of it, of course. But
absolutely.
But learn every opportunity to learn as much as you can. I think that's the biggest bit of advice.
Yeah,
and learn from real people. I mean, Google and YouTube are fantastic, right?
Yeah,
it's a great resource nowadays. ChatGTP. I mean, I ask. If I don't know what spark plug goes in a certain bike, I can within a fraction of a second, ChatGTP will tell me. You know,
I only just discovered what that is the other day.
Oh, did you? Well,
I don't know.
If you need to know a gasket size, piston size, anything, just oh right, okay, and you might want to double check that just in case. But you know, it's split second like that.
My laptop that I'm doing this off. This is Windows 8. I think, or possibly
XP.
Honestly, right?
Ding,
God, I am terrible with technology. I know I'm not supposed to be because I'm 32 years old. I asked my 12-year-old son. I don't even know how to use my 12-year-old son iPhone. Like I'm literally, I call him. I'm like, how do you do it? And he just looks at me like, what are you on about, mate? I mean, I've got an idea of somewhat of designing stuff in the respect that being that obviously I'm being lucky enough to dabble in the tattoo world a little bit, you know, so hence how I'm able to put together a presentable digital poster that I do for my podcast and things like that. Again, if you zoom in, you'll see every edge is blurry and things like that, but you know, it's you know, I'm lucky in that respect. Like even my clothing, like I've only just started kind of at first when I started, I did a t-shirt for my podcast, and then someone asked for one, and I was like, what? Like like really, like, you know, and I'm not gonna lie, it didn't take much convincing to think, you know what, maybe this can become something that maybe helps fund my my shed, because
just having that about. I mean, India Alessandra, who was lucky enough to, I'm sorry, this side, I'm looking at opposite sides of the camera, who designed this logo for me. She sent a picture, that was a few years ago now. She sent a picture of her wearing the t-shirt, like, because I sent her a t-shirt to say thank you, and she's over in Canada, and I got such a kick out of that. It was like, oh yeah, it's crazy, favorite tee and all that. But like, what I was saying was, Google's ace, ChatGTP is brilliant, obviously. All of those things are fantastic, but there's no substitute for real people, and we have a sort of dying engineering industry in this country, and those skills are not getting passed down, and there's a huge amount of knowledge, like Martin and Bob and Mick. They're all in the 60s, but who's taking over when they're not around, you know? So I'm like, my mission is to get as much knowledge as I can from them and pass it to somebody else, you know.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have a question for that, and I'll be interested to hear your answer on this. Now,
go on.
Like you say, it is becoming a dying trade, but do you feel that there is a part of, without apologize for coming across disrespectful to the lads that you hang around with and that are teaching you, do you feel that there's a bit that they don't want to teach the next generation below, that they feel that we're ruining their culture? Because from an outside, there's that question of that for me.
No, I don't think so. I think you have to approach these people with the due respect. I had to earn my friendship with Bob and with Martin. You know, they are old boys, top of their game. They get a massive amount of tire kickers and idiots that they deal with all the time. As long as you approach these people with the due respect that they deserve, and you show a shared passion for them. I find them fantastic, and really they get a kick out of wanting to teach you, and I don't think it's a case of like, I'm not telling anyone else. And there is a certain amount of trust there, if you get into it, if you get into something that's secret, especially in the works racing, you don't go around telling them.
No, 100%.
So it's a privilege,
because you kind of get that feeling,
you
like
feel like
look at the
you've earned
hipsters, you kind of get that.
There is that, and you usually, I tell you where you get that is if I don't know whether you've been down to Squires Motorcycle Cafe, right? You rock up there on a Sunday or a Thursday, classic bike night, and you rock up on one of your calf races, and you'll get all the old boys going, I can't believe what you've done to that. It was a beautiful bike when you started with it, and you get all that, but that's usually old boys that have never built a bike before. They don't understand the custom scene, or they don't want to, or they're just into classic restorations. You find that the real engineers and the real bike enthusiasts are really open to this new scene. In my experience, anyway. Yeah. It's usually.
I've not had any bad run-ins. I've just intrigued to hear, being that you're way more into the scene than I am in respect of building and engineering. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I did have one guy at the bike shed the first time I went round. I went down there for the London show, and I was talking. A guy came up to me. I didn't attract his attention. I wasn't doing anything. He just came up to me and he went, "That's a fucking ugly bike, that, mate. Excuse my language." He goes, "I can't believe you've done that." They were, like I said, they were gorgeous bikes that we started with, and I was like, "You do realise you've come to a custom bike show, like the biggest in the year.
Yeah.
Every bike in this show used to be one bike, and now it's something else." And so, have you just come for the day to tell everybody they're rubbish and then go home?
Purely because probably didn't meet even the qualification level.
But that was one in about in thousands of people I spoke to that week, and you've just got to brush it off, and
And social media is the biggest learning curve for that. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that, because obviously you've got a lot bigger following than I have. Do you get people chatting shit?
Very, very rarely. I've always found Instagram a very sort of welcoming place, and I do get negativity, and there's been a couple, but I'm just block delete. I haven't got time to let those sort of people into my headspace. But surprisingly, it's not often.
I do quite well in that respect.
People say, people keep telling me I should have a YouTube channel. I really like doing the sort of tuition workshopy stuff.
Yeah.
But I find, from what I've heard, is YouTube is incredibly unforgiving, and you get so many keyboard warriors on that, and you spend most of your time. Yeah. So I avoid that. I think Instagram seems a lot friendlier place and a lot nicer community for our sort of stuff.
I find Instagram really hard. I find all social media hard in respect of trying to progress, because I've openly said, like, the plan with the podcast came about. I don't even know how, I can't even really remember how it came about. I thought just like the idea of just trying to talk to people, really. And then at one point the idea was, this could potentially become a thing that I could potentially monetize. And then I'd say, like, by episode 10, I was kind of at that idea of, I can maybe monetize this. And then by like episode 15, 16, I realized that you can't monetize this, because it would lose what it actually stands for. This is a non-biased, not a platform against anybody in the scene of bikes, leather seat makers, tattooists, big beard care product companies. So then I quickly after that realized that, no, this is what it is. But my idea with 666 Customs is I want to build my bikes with almost no fucks given to what people think. Not claiming to be a mechanic or claiming to be a fabricator, and I'm slowly learning that every now and again I get a person that will. So my spelling's terrible. You possibly noticed it, but my spelling is appalling, and I know it sounds a bit maybe wrong, but I don't really care in the respect that I try my best to do the best spelling I can. My excuse is that from the age of 9, I did the rest of my schooling in Spain, and that's my excuse. And it is an excuse.
Yeah, well, it's a reasonable one, yeah.
But the way I look at it now, and I'm learning this so much doing this now, is let's say I've posted 1,000 pictures of people's bikes, and in 1,000 pictures, I may have had 5 people that have literally ignored what the whole post is about, appreciating a bike, and have picked up on my spelling mistake, right? And I've had literally maybe 5 people in 1,000, which is nothing. And at first I would write a big comment and I'd be like, do you know what? Fuck you. Like,
yeah.
Who the fuck are you? You know,
Yeah.
and then I'd read my comment and I'd go, mate, if I post that, I'm no different to that guy. And now what I've been able to do, and I feel it's priming me for YouTube, which is where I'm going with this, is like, it says a lot about somebody that wants to chat shit on a word. Do you know what I mean?
Well, on anything, mate. Like I said,
Yeah.
I have a zero tolerance, and I don't have to use it very often. But if somebody just, launches into one, it's just block delete. I don't even like entertain. And sometimes it'll niggle you, and you'll wanna reply, and you might even write one, and then go, no, take it off, block delete. Why let them in? Why, it's that rent free in your head kind of scenario. Just get rid of them and get on with your day,
Yeah.
And I learned that fairly quick, I guess.
You have to, don't you? You have to, I think.
Yeah. But like I said, luckily you don't get a great deal on Instagram. I try and stay true. I mean, I get approached a lot by companies now and things. I've had like watch companies and irrelevant things that have been on at me. If they send me a free watch, will you do it? And I'm like, no, I'm not into any of that. I don't want clothes, sunglasses, fucking watches. I'm a bike page.
Yeah.
And I pick the people I work with carefully. Like, obviously I believe in NWT. I use their products. I vouch for it, and I'll happily punt them out. And anti-gravity batteries, I punt them out because I put them in all my bikes. So I wouldn't punt them out unless I was convinced with them, and I wasn't tried and tested. I got a nice relationship with Spada. I like Spada. The guys there are really kind to me.
Yeah, I've seen you've done some cool photo shoots for them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if they're gonna send me a load of nice free clothes, it's the least you can do. And like I said, I'm a poor bike builder, so luckily I don't have to spend much on clothes because Spada or Rocker or somebody sends me something, which is nice. So, but I don't want to go too far down that influencer route.
Yeah, because you got to you got to be careful, haven't you?
I'm bikes and building bikes and showing off my bikes. I mean, my business is through Instagram, so people don't want adverts for random stuff. I'm not going to start, selling watches or sunglasses or anything like that. There's just no point to me in doing that. But if there's a product I believe in, like I'll entertain the idea. But yeah, so and it pays sometimes, like the shoot with the CB 750. If I can get 2 things out of one, so I joined up with Spada, and I did the CB 750 shoot with all their gear, but I got a brilliantly professional, shoot with my my CB 750.
They are great
to the local church. We're going to this medieval church, which is beautiful. Some All Saints. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's it. So like for me, I'm kind of on the other side of my goal is to fundamentally the end goal is to create a living, an income, creating videos, doing what I want to do and pay the bills. So I kind of, like I say, it didn't take much convincing after surprisingly a few people asked to wear one of my shirts, and at first I was like, I managed to kind of get somebody that would do the work for me, and then very quickly it realized that unfortunately, because I don't have a big budget to order 100 shirts and 100 this, I ended up having to do I do a lot of it myself, and I was very skeptical of like really announcing that I genuinely collect the shirts. I've got a guy that then does all the cutting, and then I do all the application, but for me, being that my end goal is to create a living through content, not through like how you're doing it. So yours is obviously keep it solely majority about bikes. I'm kind of the idea of maybe a little clothing range, which I said didn't take much convincing after a couple of people wanted to wear my shirt. And like I've got a watch range coming out. I've got a friend who is massively involved with watches, but what I wanted to do is, because I am a guy that's like most people, we don't have the money to buy a Rolex. So I said to my friend, I was like, I said to my friend, I was like, I want to create a watch that's going to be no more than £100, that literally comes with a certificate of like 666 Customs Josh. Then the guy that's going to build the watch can come back a year later to be serviced and battery replaced. It's having the logo, professional watch logos made, which are costing me a fortune to get done. But I want to create, it's more about the experience, not just buying a watch for £100. Obviously the watch has to be of a certain standard to justify £100. But I'm about trying to create this. Like, I don't believe that just because you can't afford a 30 grand watch, why should you be denied an experience, if that makes any sense? Which is kind of what whole 666 thing stands for, really. Is hence how I'm able to keep my hoodies affordable and things like that, you know?
Yeah. Have you come across Boyd's of Bedford?
Yes.
Yeah, you should hook up with those guys. I mean, they're wonderful guys. I see them at Bike Shed. I see them at Kickback and all those sort of shows, and they'll do anything for anybody. They're gorgeous blokes. Really friendly. And they're doing a similar thing to you. That's why I suggested it. They make all their stuff in house and themselves, and
and the stuff looks incredible. Like they do proper screen printing. I know that Ollie from Ride Choppers or Die, he's quite close with them guys. You know, the other Ollie that does a bigger podcast than me. You know, it's but yeah, no, that's kind of what it's about. It's just trying to like give, you know, at the end of the day, not everyone can afford a 60-70 pound hoodie. So that's why like I stress myself out trying to create a hoodie that's 30 quid, which the profit margin is next to nothing. But that's not the point. It's like, whilst people want to wear my hoodie, and I'm still like, it's just a logo, and they're like, people want to wear it. I'm like, okay, you know.
I mean, the Instagram thing for me was because it sort of happened by accident, but now it's my business. So 90% of my business comes through my Instagram page, directed to my website, and then to me. So that's 99% of the time, that's where I've been seen by the client, right? Yeah. But, you know, not everyone can afford one of my bikes, and that's not me being big-headed. It's just, you know, and I do get one or two negative things about like $7.5 grand for a 125 150cc calf is a lot of money. Well, it is, but I'm not going to apologize for that, because the work that goes into those bikes is ridiculous, you know. I said very early that I'd never discount my time, and that's my business model. Absolutely. Because it's me that you're buying. If you buy one of my bike, you're buying me, my time. You're not, and my skill and what I've learned to do. You know. So, but what I want to do at the same time through my platforms is, while I'm building these bikes for the lucky people that can afford them, can I pass on some of that knowledge, some of that skill, you know, some of those details that I do? Can I pass that on to other builders so they can? And I've always tried to be really open for people to come to me and ask. You know, I try to reply to everybody, and it's getting a bit more difficult nowadays, but people come with genuine questions about bike building. I'll sit at 10 o'clock at night and have a conversation with them, you know, to try and help them out.
Oh, yeah, I can vouch for that. You know, like I say, going back a couple of years ago, you helped me out with loads of stuff. I mean, even telling me like your painting tips for your engines, like you don't have to do that, you know. I'm not precious about giving away secrets. I mean, I
I don't tell people where I get those wheels from a 125. I've had a million requests for that. You can find them if you look hard enough, but I don't.
You found them.
I would not. You've got to have the skill to make them right. I wouldn't want somebody to buy a set on my recommendation, put them on their bike, and they just fall apart. You know, you don't want to put them out of the factory on your bike. You've got to know what you're doing. Got to be able to machine the right spaces, replace. You know, like we spoke about already. So I don't, as a rule, tell people where I get those sort of things from. People can find them. But if you've got a question about how to mill a spacer on a lathe, how to start on a milling machine, how to turn, how to make an exhaust system, those sort of questions, I'll happily, have a discussion. But you can find, but you don't have to ask me where I got such and such from. That's just lazy. Go and have a look. I get them from the same place everybody else gets them from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's it, isn't it? It's and like you say, it's just trying to keep it all going. I mean, I think I'm trying to think. You did a video, I think it was beginning of last year, and you sat down and spoke about like how Instagram had like kind of changed, and you felt that it was becoming a bit crazy with posting, and you did it was a really like, I think it was one of your first where you sat down and actually just spoke to the camera and kind of spoke about your thoughts, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was about, because I found it very interesting.
I spent a lot of time fighting against Instagram as far as trying to learn what it wants, because it's so important to me, my business. I spent a great deal of time taking advice from people and trying to learn how the algorithm works and how to make it work for me and all that sort of stuff. And then I found myself like, all this advice that people were giving, it just wasn't making any sense. Instagram itself was telling you needed to post, every day. You needed to put a post on your feed. You needed to be doing so many stories. You needed to be doing so many reels with captions and all this sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, I've got bikes to build. Do you know what I mean? And there was a lot of other builders and a lot of other accounts that I followed that were following this advice. So you'd have a look at your Instagram and you'd just be bombarded with shit. And it wasn't quality stuff. It was just people posting because they were told to post. There was one, I'm not going to mention the name, but there was one bike building company in particular that was just reposting the same. They were just doing the same thing on the same bike every time. And I was sick of seeing it. And to the point where I muted their account because I didn't want to see it anymore. And then I thought to myself, as I was doing that, my customers could be doing the same thing. My followers could be doing the same thing. I'm not going to post anymore because I'm being told to. I'm going to post when I've got something to post, something worthwhile to share or something to do. And that was the advice I was trying to get across to people. Yeah. Otherwise, it just turns into a flood of rubbish for doom scrolling purposes, and Instagram wants us on their thing all the time, but we've got to get out and do something proper. So I think my advice was, don't post unless you've got something worthwhile to. I hadn't made a post for weeks until I put that up today.
That's what I noticed.
I put stories up. Most days I'll put a story up sometimes, but I won't feel guilty if I've not got it, or I won't feel like I ought to be posting if I'm not. If there's no to post, I don't put it up anymore. I've stopped fighting it. And I'm just doing my own thing. And I found.
How's it going? How do you find it's going?
That's working for me. I put in December. I put a post up of a picture of my old bike, and it just out of the blue did 250,000 in reach and 10,000 odd likes and stuff. And it was like that. I don't know what I did different with that post. I don't think I did anything different. It was just a nice picture of a bike in a field, and it just went crazy. And I got a lot of followers from it and all that sort of stuff and growth. But that was sometime in December. And I think that was the last that was the last post I did before that. You know.
Yeah.
I've done some stuff for my subscribers, and I've been putting stories up most days, but
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because I knew that like as soon as I like went back through your page, I knew straight away, like, because I couldn't remember exactly what, like, the ins and outs of the video, because it was a long time ago that you posted that video, but it was
I think I
something
took
that
it down in the end.
Did you?
I don't think it's still there. I think I left it up to do its purpose, and it went a bit viral, and it got so many positive comments saying, yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
But I didn't really want me moaning.
No, I know what you mean.
Hanging around on my page for long, because that's not what my page is about. So,
yeah.
You know, I don't mind doing that once in a while in stories, but
yeah.
You know, I didn't want a reel of a video of me just moaning about Instagram. It's you know, so I think in the end I did take it off. Yeah.
But it's something like for me that kind of like, and it's weird because I'll post every day a picture of a bike, and Facebook will always say, oh, we suggest that this time, and I go against it for the exact same reasons. And it's weird, like, because I couldn't remember the ins and outs of the video, but it's something that quite often pops up in my head with regarding to that video that you'd posted the other year, or I believe it was the beginning of last year, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And it's like, because it's right at the end of the day, yeah, we do need this platform, you know, in whatever reason we need it, but we're not slaves to it, you know. And it's interesting. It was an interesting sort of something I wanted to.
And people are still into photographs, you know. People still want to see them, and they were banging reel. They were telling us photographs are dead. Reels. They tell us hashtags are dead, but you know they're not. They're still working.
My hashtags are working.
Yeah, and you know they're trying to drive you down one way, but like I said, in late December, one picture of a bike and it just went crazy. So you know the proof's there, really.
Yeah, 100%.
But there's always a lot of people prepared to tell you you're doing something wrong. I'm not getting drunk, by the way. This is alcohol free.
No, you do whatever, man.
It's
just good to.
I drink alcohol free beer like it's water.
I don't drink. I think last year I had 4 pints, mate, all year.
Yeah, well, I don't drink. I can say it because it's common knowledge. I used to be an alcoholic years ago.
Congratulations for overcoming it, mate.
Yeah, I'm 48 now. I was 30. Yeah. But I do drink alcohol-free beer like it's water. Like I said, keeps me on the straight and narrow.
It takes a lot to be able to say that, you know, like just to be able to, because it's.
I was like I said to you at the start, I was a musician, right? And I grew up I was a musician in the 90s. And the turn of the millennium, and it was a different thing back then. I mean, we were in the middle of still all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I was on the circuit from when I was 16 to 30, and I loved it. I wouldn't change my time again, but I was a completely broken man by the time I'd finished. I pretty close to the bottom, you know. The lifestyle, and you know, I was a drug and alcohol addict by the time I was 30. So
and it's incredible. It's incredible that you've appreciate the fact that you experienced that lifestyle and that that you've been able to overcome it, because it's obviously like it's not. You know, I mean, I've got reasons why I don't drink. I've never suffered with substance abuse directly. But you know, it's it affects a lot of people in a lot of ways.
It does. I mean, it makes it. If I had my life again, I probably wouldn't do anything different. I have some amazing times. I did some amazing things in my 20s that I wouldn't want to forget, but and I do again. But yeah, I'm stronger because I went through that, you know. And I still battle with it. I'm not, you know, you never. The problem is with addiction is you are never free of it. you are always recovering. It can hit you at any time, and you have to be strong and know and see the signs and know when it's coming and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
but it's something you live with for the rest of your life. You don't. I mean, there's a lot of like these alpha male like stuff you see on social media, like you could win it, like it's a fight you can win. It's not. It's a fight that you learn to tolerate and you learn to live with, and it is a battle, but you've got to be prepared that you're never really going to win it. You'll always
100%.
You'll always be an addict. You just learn not to be. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you mean.
That feeling never goes away.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And the thing is, it's like that same side of the brain that wants to dive back into that scene, that part of your life. All you've done is you've grabbed hold of that and went, right, you want to do something, build a bike. It's that same irritating thing that, oh yeah, but I want to, you've just been able to kind of somewhat reel the reins and like, no,
you got to
grab a
channel
spanner.
it. Channel it somewhere. Yeah, you've got to keep your mind busy, and you've got to. I mean, you have to be careful. What I'm saying about the battle, you've got to be careful when the pressure's on.
Yeah, and
you've got to be careful when, whether that's monetary pressure, whether it's about paying the bills and all that sort of stuff, business pressure, or whether it's pressure leading up to a big show or whatever. You have to be careful that you're monitoring yourself and you're keeping one eye on that.
Yeah.
But the trick is to keep your mind busy and keep your focus. And a big thing for me was the settling down and having children, and that, my kids keep me anchored. And my wife, and they're incredibly supportive. My wife is an amazing woman. But yeah, when you've got a couple of little kids that rely on you, then that's an anchor. That the nothing anchors you to the ground like that. When you've got a couple of lives that are relying on you.
Yeah. I mean, I've got two kids, two boys, and just trying to, like, for me with all of this, like, obviously I spend a lot of time in front of a camera talking to being, like I said earlier, I've been lucky enough to talk to all you guys, and kind of like being able to somewhat start to bring in a little bit of money from selling a shirt. And like, I'll show my kids, and I don't show them to go, oh look, your dad's made some money, in the respect of, I show them like, look, this is what your dad's doing, this is what I want to achieve from this at the end with the 666 thing and creating videos. And fundamentally, I see so many people changing their life completely on YouTube with their videos, and I say to them, like, this is what I want to do, and this is why I'm doing it, and I show them little wins, and I'm learning so much about myself, like appreciating them little wins. I'll post a picture of when Facebook or Instagram have gone, congratulations. It's a load of gibberish to anyone, but I'll post that picture and I'll go, look, this to me is a big thing. It's
cool, man.
Do you know what I mean? It's just trying to.
I think my advice would just be take your time, do, put in the work, be prepared. It's going to be tough. It's going to be up and down, but just keep at it. There's been times over the last year with the cost of living crisis. I don't know how some people are coping at all.
That's crazy.
Because we're barely clinging on, and it's tough. It's crazy. So there's gonna be ups and downs, but if you're still here and you're still fighting, people say, like, how's business, Jonathan? And I'm still here, and I count that as a privilege.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses crash before or after the first year, and I'm still here. So that to me is a big accomplishment. And if I can I've got plans. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I've got big plans, and I'm going to keep fighting for them. But at the minute, I'm happy, and this will come to an end at some point. It's going to last.
But what is it? What is it that makes you like? And this is a good one, I think. What is it that makes you think that why you're still here? Do you think is it not just the fact that people appreciate your craft? Because obviously, up until they see the bike in person, they don't know how good them worlds are, how good them tolerances are. Do you feel that it's the present? I mean, I'm a big believer in like you can't fake this shit. You can't fake like what you really stand for, even in front of a camera. Like, do you feel that that's a part of it? Like, you seem like a humble guy that like you said, just wants to show what he can do, like stand for what you stand for. And I believe that up until they see that product, that is all they have to go off. Do you think that that's how you?
Yeah, well, I
Part of
think
it?
I'm really. I hope I'm really open. Like I said, I want to show people what my processes are. And you know, if you back to that, if you just show that in a finished bike in a you know in an airfield or wherever with a helicopter behind it, on you know, nobody notices the engine. But to me, that's where all the work is. There's hours of me in that. Absolute, like, ridiculous, too many hours of me in that. And that showing that shows the level of detail I'm going for, I guess, that, you know, and the level of finish. I mean, I'm not going to bore people like showing them the insides of that, but I have done whilst I've been building it. But you know, I think that helps because people can see, you know, the lengths I go to and the detail that I go to. Doing the shows is good for me, like getting stuff out there and talking to people. Like I sold this bike because of the bike that was there at the last bike shed show. Yeah. And the customer saw it and he wanted to take that one and said, you can't, that was a commission build, it's somebody else. Can you build me one? Yeah. And then we talked and stuff. And
that's cool.
So he knew exactly what I was getting, but you know, I said, well, this particular bike was done on a quite a strict small budget.
Yeah.
For this amount, you can have this, and you know. So yeah, I hope. I guess I like to think people are buying into me, and you know.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what
the chance.
That's
the chance to have something. Like I don't like the word designer, but a one-off. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my little 125s, they're all very similar. But they're all different in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even each one of them are 125s, so they're built to the same spec and same model. They've all got something about them that's different from the last. I don't like making the exact same bike again.
Yeah,
but especially with the big boutique builds.
Exactly. Which is like, say, like with me with the watch, like the idea that this is the concept watch. I'm only going to release 10, and I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm not like. Because again, I want to create that experience, but I want someone to feel like, oh wow, I've got one of only 10 at an affordable price. And you know, like I said to some of my friends, I'm like I say to my missus, like, I don't know what it is, and it's really weird. Like, this is the first time in my life, 32 years old, that I feel that the whole 666 customs thing in general, everything, it has the potential to become something, and I can't answer it why. I don't know, because I'm getting like messages from, not all the time. I get maybe a message a week or whatever, and someone will just go, keep doing what you're doing, you know. Yeah. And it's like weird. It's like, because I'm just a little dude sat in a little flat in the middle of, you know, in between, you know what I mean, in Market Wheaton where I live, and like just sat in a corner with my homemade printed banner thing, and people just, I would say I'm not getting millions of views, but the people that are watching, they're like, just keep doing it. And it's like, I'm making like, new friends from it.
Without being, I hate sounding like I'm being arrogant or whatever, but I do get approached quite a lot to do certain things, and I like, but you just seem like a nice, down to earth bloke, you know, who's got a passion, who's got an idea, and he wants to do something, and you know that's brilliant. Just keep it, like you said, keep doing what you're doing. If you've got a passion for it, keep going, and people will buy into that. You know, I hope so. I hope that's what's happening with me.
Yeah, I've been like, you know, like being able to interview people. I mean, I've become like internet friends with a guy called Bob who's watching from Canada, and I talk to Bob all the time now, and like being able to sit down and interview a guy in New York. I mean, a guy called Terry Lund who owns a company called Lethal Threat. You know, he used to make clothing for Guns N' Roses, and like he's the guy who helped push one of Indian Larry's bikes into a show, and like he asked me off air, he was like, Josh, what is it you're looking to get from this? I'm like, Terry, I'm already getting it. I said I'm not in a financial position to travel to New York, so the idea that I'm gonna be able to sit in the corner of my front room talking to you, like hearing your stories of your experiences, it truly excites me. You know, it's like,
well, that's the passion right there,
do
isn't
you know
it?
what
That's
I
what
mean?
you keep getting. If you keep getting that across to people, then people will buy into it. I mean, that there's so many like such a lot of fake stuff out on social media platforms that are just like people pretending to have the perfect lives and the perfect things, and and it's all wrong. Real people. It's about real people doing cool stuff. So just keep doing what you're doing.
And that's it. Like, kind of like, and I apologize for keep going on, but like when I first discovered your work is like on my tattoo page. Like, obviously I love tattooing, but I'm a big enough man to accept that my technical ability took me to a certain level, and I've got kids to support and a wife to support, that I just was not able to make that money. So I'm not that guy. I'm not bitter about it. I absolutely am privileged to have been able to mark people for the rest of their life, and they've come back for more, but I just was not able to make that money. So like being able, it's like, it excites me, like speaking to you 3 years ago going, oh Jonathan, how did you get that finish on that engine? And then 3 years later I'm on a different platform and like still able to talk to you, and like how cool is it now that I've now kind of come back to the culture that I enjoyed so much my whole life with bikes, and now I'm able to sit here and hear your story, even though I kind of got an idea of your internet Instagram story. But like you say, the fact that the reason why I messaged you about your engine, about how you got that finish, was because the finish, even in a picture, looked that good, and I was like, how the fuck has he managed to get that finish? So it was on one of your CG engines.
Yeah, well,
incredible.
I'm not. I mean, some people are like, why don't you powder coat? Why do you Cerakote? Why all that sort of stuff on the engine blocks themselves? I've always been, and I do like the big builds get Cerakote or generally, but with those 125s, I choose paint. I choose paint. The covers and the top and the tops and all that sort of stuff, they're all powder coated. But the barrel and the crankcase, I always choose paint. And if you do it right, if you've got the process right, then you will get a good finish. But it's like anything, you have to put the work in. It's all about the prep work. So you need to like fine blast it, so you've got a really good keyed clean surface. And then I go at it with the blowtorch, and I make sure any of the grease, any of the moisture, anything is out of that engine. You draw it all out, and you make sure you've got a nice sort of warm, very ultra clean, no oxidization, no nothing. And then it's a primer, and then a colour coat, and then it's a lacquer, and they have to be. It took me so long to get the right combination of the paints and of a high temperature, like very high temperature, 600 degrees.
Yeah.
And paint will expand better when the engine gets suddenly cold to suddenly warm. You want paints that will expand with the heat but stay solid, but stay resilient. And if you do it right and you're patient enough, you can get some amazing finishes. Some of the best engines I've seen have been two-pack painted, and they've been beautiful things. And there's no reason you can't do it. But it's where it falls down, of course, is when you've got the young builders that haven't got the experience, and they just get a rattle can, and they just spray over all the rubbish, and it looks great for like 5 minutes, and then it's all off again.
That's it.
Yeah, there's no, and of course, if you powder coat an engine or you Cerakote, like powder coat particularly, once it cracks or once it starts to go, then you're screwed then.
Yeah.
With a painted surface, you've got some scope to maintain it. and keep on top of it if you need to. But touch wood, you know, my painting.
No, that's it. I think so after I spoke to you about a couple of years ago about painting, I was just in the process of I did like a patina paint job on my engine, and I used I didn't use the 2K that you'd recommended to me, but I used something similar. And to be fair, I rode that through a whole winter, you know, salts on the roads and whatnot. You know, and it's never ever chipped. Never. The barrel has, but I didn't use the same product on the barrel. I just used I think I used the barbecue paint for the barrel. And
yeah, well, that's the thing. There's so many different stuff out there, but there's the ones I found are like very specific for barrel, you know, engine paints, high quality, and you know, don't go straight on the aluminium with the colour coat. Make sure you got a really good primer, the same standard primer on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you get the process right, like anything, and you can get some really cool results. But you know, because like Cerakote and powder coat counts a lot of people out. Like if you're not confident enough to strip a crankcase, to split a crankcase and strip it, and then send it off for vapor blasting and Cerakoting and then rebuild it. A lot of amateur builders aren't capable of doing a full engine rebuild, so they need an alternative. You know, same. So it's good to show people that there is an alternative. You know, if your engine's good and you don't need to split the crankcase, then why split a crankcase if you don't need to, if there's not a reason to.
Yeah, that's it.
Especially with them little CG engines, they run for blooming ever. You know,
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think going back to that caliper issue, what I ended up doing, because after you'd said, because I'd messaged a certain individual who wants you to remortgage your house to buy any Honda part from, which I guess you probably reckon you know who I'm on about.
David Silver.
That's the man. And I'm like, and I messaged my friend that I was just helping him fix his bike because he needed new brake pads in, and obviously took one pin out, and the other one was just like, took the other pin out, put them back in by hand, and the second pin just kept spinning. It was like, strip the thread in there, and literally they came out easy. So there was no reason as to why they'd done that. And then, like I said, 350 quid. I was like, no, mate, I don't want a whole bike. I just want a caliper. And then I messaged you. And
that's what they are, though.
I mean, job done.
Yeah, David Silver's spares for everyone. They are pricey, but you know, you're getting genuine stock.
Oh, you're getting genuine,
Honda parts, brand new, and they are pricey. You should try getting stock parts for a K100. The BMW, like that's up another level, you know.
Is it really?
Oh God, yeah. Luckily, in Germany, like Germany and Holland and in Europe, there's some really good sort of aftermarket K specialists, bike specialists, BMW specialists. Sorry, K Parts Holland are absolutely amazing. Got everything you need, really, either refurbished or brand new old stock. So there is people out there, but yeah, I've pretty much got an account with David Silver's. I'm on it. If I'm doing an old Honda, you can't avoid it.
No, it's not cheap though. It's not. I ended up using chemical metal to fix that issue. After I spoke to you, I got some chemical metal, and it just literally, if it was my bike, I'll be honest, I would have used it. But it was a fact, because the pin went back. You know what I'm on about. The pin for the pads. It went in, and it did nip. However, because it wasn't mine, and the idea of letting my friend ride his bike, and the chance of it vibrating loose and that pin coming out, I said to him, you can't. I said, it can't. I would have used it because I would have just kept making sure that it was, because it didn't move. But anyway, so all I did is I filled the hole with chemical metal, and then I re-tapped the thread back in, and it nipped up nicely. Right,
okay. You know, well, that's a fix. It'll work now. You know, with obviously I have to be super careful with stuff, and yeah. Actually, talking about this one, like getting getting the water pump. I said in the post, right on the K100, the water pump sits right behind the front wheel, right? So it gets all of the elements thrown at it, all the mud and all the water and everything. And that thing there was a state. Every bolt had been rusted in. So getting them out without stripping the threads or breaking the bolts off was a real struggle. I mean, I had hours on it, very carefully trying to remove these socket bolts. And one of them stripped, so the thread, like, it broke off, and then, no, that's what it was. The head of the bolt broke off, and because it had rusted almost all the way through. So I've got like a choice. I either try and remove it, what I can, or I drill it. And after trying to remove it and it still wasn't going anywhere, I finally make the decision that I'm going to have to drill this bolt out. So I'm very carefully I'm doing this with a hand drill. I mean, ideally you want to put it on a bench drill, like a bench press. Yeah. So you've got it exact. But I'm doing it with a hand drill. So I'm going in with a 1mm drill. Now, you going into a hardened steel bolt with a 1mm drill is hard work, right? And if you break the drill off, it's game over. If you break the drill in the hole, because then you can't even drill it. So I'm going in, I've got my 1mm, and then I'm going up 0.5 of a mil every time till it gets to the M6 size, and then hopefully it starts to crumble and it comes out. But it wasn't coming out, so I've gone in with the M6, and then of course I've got a strip thread that I can't put another bolt in. So that's when you got a helicoil. Do you know what helicoil is, right?
Yep.
So then you've got to get the right drill size, the right size helicoil. You've got to try and helicoil it, and that's what I did. So one of those bolts I've got there, I've rescued from the helicoil. But once the helicoil's in, it's good, and that's only a cover bolt, you know.
Yeah.
But it's when you're dealing with anything structural or anything in your brakes, you got to be real careful. Yeah. Like, and you know, when I'm doing this, it's all right if you're working on your own bike, like you said, and you know what you're looking for, and you can keep an eye on it. Yeah. But when your bike's going to be ridden by somebody else out on the road,
yeah,
you've got to have everything like buttoned down. I mean, the first time I sold the bike was terrifying because, you know, you're constantly thinking, what happens if I haven't done this or I haven't done that?
I know exactly what you mean by that.
Do you know when you get on a bike the first time that you've built? Your first shakedown. I've built a bike and I'm going out for my first shakedown ride. You're doing 50 mile an hour and you suddenly think, did I do that spindle bolt up properly?
Yeah. Oh, you know, mate. I know.
I don't think I torqued up the rear suspension, you know, like the rear suspension bolt. And then you're having all these panics in, you know. But yeah, imagine doing that when somebody else is riding your bike.
Well, I've had it. I mean, I was, 14 years old, 15 years old. I was fortunate enough to spend 3 days at Jerez racetrack because I only live like 45 minutes from Jerez in Spain. And one of my friends was competing in the Spanish Supermoto Championship, and he wanted me to change a tire. And I was like, look, I'm not a mechanic, but he knew I fucked about with my own bikes and shit. He was like, look, just, and I think he had he had to go to some scrutineering or whatever it was. He couldn't do it at the time. And he's like, Josh, just get this fucking wheel off, get it down to the dudes that are swapping tires over, and get it done for me. Like, I need you to help me. So I did it, and obviously, like, he's gone back out on track, and first he's scrubbing tire in, and I'm like, I've got the pocket because my job was lap times, you know, keeping an eye on his lap times, and I'm thinking, fucking hell, here come 2 minutes. I'm like, he's averaging about a minute 50, 48, 50 a lap. I think 2 minutes. Oh, fucking hell! Has this wheel dropped out? And I just completely didn't think that he's got to scrub a brand new race slick in the back. You know, he's got to scrub this tire in, and it's absolutely terrifying. I'm thinking, oh, what have I done?
Yeah. Well, I remember what a squeaky bum moment for me was I'd rebuilt the back wheel on the Northman, and you know, I'd rebuilt it, laced it, trued it, balanced it, and then I thought I was really proud of myself. I did a cracking job of that. It was brilliant. But then I'm stood behind it on the dyno, and the bike's going flat out on the dyno, and I'm stood behind this back wheel, and I'm thinking, I hope this. I hope I did do it right, because otherwise it's coming off, and it's tangled mess into the side of my van. But yeah, so that was a bit. But you have these doubts, and that's a natural part of it. But yeah, as a professional bike builder, that delivering bikes to customers, you have to be insanely strict about what you let out your workshop. And everything has to be double checked and buttoned down. And having another set of eyes on it as well. I'm lucky. My MOT guy, he doesn't just write me a ticket for my bikes. He does another set of eyes on them. And he'll go and check everything and make sure.
Well, that's it, and it's like you say, it's the fact that you built something and like getting someone else out on it, and it's like even when I built my first back end, when I built the whole back end on ZX10, I got a friend that's 21, he's about 6'5", 21, 22 stone, and I was like, look, sit on this thing. I said, jump on it, and he's like, what? I said, literally, I had the bike, like I had some little steps each side of it. I said, stand on this, and the bike was on, it was upright, so he could literally sit on it without his feet on the floor. I said, get on it. I said, and literally just bang down on it. I said, if it don't move, we're all right. Because I used proper like seamless tube, like half-inch seamless tube, and did all the bends and everything. But it was the first time I've ever built like a main structural piece, and I wanted to make sure that I way overdid the bracing. I've got, I think it's 3 mil thick plate or whatever it is, like some big box sections where I come up from the bottom tube, welded all that in, welded the bracing in.
It's better to over-engineer something than it is to engineer it, especially if you're not sure or you're new to it. It's difficult. Like people ask me what's the most important skill, and you're like, well, it's kind of all of them. I don't like it when I see accounts on Instagram calling out, like you'll get an electrical specialist that builds, race looms or whatever, and they'll say, oh, I've just had a bike from a custom builder, and look at this loom, and you're like, well, why are you ditching, why are you taking the piss out of some poor guy who's tried his best to build a bike? It worked for him, so you do what you do. You're a professional at it. So I don't like people calling each other out for those sort of mistakes that we've all made when we first started building bikes. And if you're a custom bike builder, you have to be a jack of all trades, and it doesn't mean you're not a master of none by any means, but you are. To be a custom bike builder, you're a mechanic, you're a fabricator, you're an electrician, you're a designer, you're a whole collection of skill sets to be able to build a bike. So I don't think calling people out for decisions they've made on it. I'm not. Does that make sense?
No, 100%.
So I don't
100%.
like to see that, but you can't beat yourself up. You are like I said, when you build a bike, you have to be everything. And there are people out there that are just electricians or just mechanics or just fabricators, and it's easy for them to turn around and say, well, your welding's not as good as it should be. When I can turn around and say, well, your mechanics isn't as good as it should be. Or, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you have to be forgiving, and we're all learning, and everybody starts somewhere. And I made some horrendous mistakes on that first build. That's why it took a year for me to build a 125 that I can do in a couple of months now. Every mistake is a learning point, right? That's
absolutely. Absolutely. It's some of us take a bit longer. I make a mistake and go, well, that didn't work, and then think I've not done it again and done the same thing again. Not in the bike scene. I built from ground up, I built three bikes, and not one of them's ever fallen apart, so I must be doing something okay. But again, hence why I said I'm not building bikes to sell. I'm building bikes to irritate the people that get upset about things. Not deliberately going out to irritate people, but people are going to chat shit on my world, and I welcome that. I'm like, yes, okay. They don't look. They're not lovely little ringlets sat on top of each other.
Well, yeah. I mean,
However,
it's fine if you can do beautiful rainbow, dime stacking or whatever, welds. Then brilliant. But you're probably doing it 24. All day in, day out. That's all you're doing. You're welding. I mean, that's all that you need to be an expert at something is time. Time and practice. That's it. And then you become an expert. I'm lucky that I fully submersed myself in this bike building thing, so my learning curve has gone like that in a fairly short space of time because I live and breathe it.
And when you're left no choice but to make it work as well, you were left no choice. It had to work. Yeah,
and if I'm not in here working on the bikes, I'm in. I'm at home thinking about building bikes. It's like you are doing it 24/7, or I'm talking to somebody about building bikes, or I'm in a conversation on somebody about building bikes.
Yeah. Or you're sat in your shed, sat in your workshop freezing, talking about building bikes.
Yeah, I mean it is a lifestyle, but it's like I said, the learning curve is just, and it's still going. I fully, you never stop. There's always something, especially when you start tapping into those people I've talked about.
Yeah, 100%. And I've got a vision of kind of potentially something that you're gonna do, like a vintage race. I can kind of see it, and I think if it kind of goes how I think it's gonna go, I can see something being pretty special.
Toby Southern, we had this thing for ages where we wanted to do a collaboration. Toby's the one that built me the seat cowl for the last K100. He's he's gonna hate me because I've forgotten what you call the skill.
Is he the one that makes them from 3D printing?
No, not at all. The name of it's gone. This is me getting old. He works with steel and aluminium. He's a shaper. He's actually a sculptor now.
Okay.
But he learnt his trade on working on old classic sports cars, bodywork, and all that sort of stuff.
Coach builder.
Coach builder. That's what. Thank you for saving me there. You'll hate me for that. So yeah, he's an incredible coach builder, and we've had the idea that we do a collaboration together.
That's gonna be cool.
And I don't know when we're going to do it because it won't be a commission build. It'll be something I have to fund. We fund ourselves. So the idea is to do something a bit sort of Barbarella, 60s sci-fi kind of race, classic racer. If Barbarella was doing the TT in 1960, what would the bike look like? That's the question.
Yeah,
so
I can see that.
A bit sort of Buck Rogers kind of Barbarella.
Yeah, with some pretty cool materials being chucked into the equation.
Yeah, but so yeah, like I'd like to do a race bike with all aluminium coach fairings,
which is no easy feat. I mean, welding aluminium, I've never done it, but I know a few people that can do it, and they said the thing is with Ali is like you're watching it as you're laying down a pool. Gone.
It disintegrates. It gets to a certain point, it just disintegrates in front of you.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of aluminium work to do on the CRF. I'm pointing because it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the CRF is having all aluminium bodywork on it, and it's quite some quite complicated panels to make. So I've been lucky with innovation that I've now got a metal supplier. So it's all sort of I've got access to aerospace grade, 6061, 7000 series aluminium, which is getting expensive and hard to get. So yeah, the CRF, which will hopefully be at the bike shed.
That'd be cool.
That's got a lot of aluminium fab work to do in it, and it's going to have
you doing all the alley welding yourself?
I might. I'm doing all of the cutting and shaping. I might farm out the TIG welding.
Again, because it's not easy.
I might ask Bob if he'll help me out with that, just because I need it. I could probably bodge it, but I don't want to. I want it to be perfect, and the welds won't be. I will be blending it all in, so the welds are invisible. But yeah, that's going to have some complicated stuff, and it's going to have a surfboard rack on it as well.
Okay, I see that.
So that's going to be kind of fun. My first surfboard rack on a bike.
I can kind of see some. I don't know. I got a vision of like some vintage style colours with maybe a little bit of woodwork supports for the surfboard, bit of elegance. I don't know. I can kind of see.
Yeah, it's loosely based on. It's loosely based on about 5 years ago, I think it was. Deus Ex Machina. They did a CRF 250L. In a similar way, and that's the inspiration photograph that the client sent me, but he specifically wanted it based on this 300 Rally, which is an amazing bike. I've fallen in love with it. I took it out a few times before I dismantled it, and I loved riding it. I mean, really, I had to do that thing where you go at 60 mile an hour and you stand up over the front wheel, pretend you're in Dakar.
Feel for it.
Yeah, but yeah, so that was fun. Just. Pretend you're on the dunes in the Sahara. Yeah, but,
no, that's cool.
Incredible bikes, but ridiculously hard to get hold of. You pay as much for a second-hand one as you do a new one now.
Really?
Because
which seems to be the prices are crazy on bikes in general. I think.
Well, because it's so new and so popular that they punt it out as being the closest thing you can buy to a road Dakar bike, and. There's a 6 to 8 month waiting list on a new one, so obviously that pushes the second-hand price up. It was really hard for me to get one that that didn't price myself out of the build. Because you quote a certain price, you don't want to be spending 75%.
No, you half your budget on just
So I was really lucky.
That's so I think. Mate, we've been on here nearly 2.5 hours. That's incredible.
We have, yeah.
The longest podcast I think I've done, which is But so for people that want to reach out and get a build, where can they find you? I mean, how's the best way to get hold of you as well?
You can get me through Instagram. I try to answer. JonathanHull.co.uk is my website. That's got all the details in there of how to get in touch, or it's jonathan@jonathanhull.co.uk if you want to email. There's a business WhatsApp on my Instagram account too, so lots of ways to get in touch.
Awesome. No, that's cool. So so again, mate, I'll end the old live stream in a second, and thanks again for taking the time. Like I say, I know you're a busy man.
Thank you. So. You're a very easy man to talk to. It's been fun.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't waffle on too much.
No, mate. And I promise you will regret that offer of a cup of tea.
Do it, mate. Do
it. You'll hear this racket coming out of a short, stubby eBay special SP can on a ZX10. It's popping and banging.
Well, I'm old enough to let you know if you start being a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Fuck off. But no, it's great to. I'll end the old live stream, mate.
All right, cool.